Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick. How are you guys? We're back again to continue sifting through all the data we have on X-Wing 2nd Edition from FFG presented at Gen Con. In this video we're going to have a look at the First Order, and for the First Order in Wave 2 we only have two expansions of ships. That's the Conversion Pack and the TIE FO. They didn't get another ship like the Resistance, however this does bring the Resistance and the First Order level in terms of the amount of ships that they have on each of the factions. Let's dive right into it. Here is the spread we see on the reveal article for the Conversion Pack. Now in terms of archetype and builds, there's not too much to talk about here. We have a Captain Phasma crew card, just one crew First Order. At the end of something happens. We'll see what happens when more of that's revealed. Supreme Leader Snoke. These ships can no longer be supported by Palp, so there's going to be some really big bomb effect that you can put with the First Order, just like you did with Palp in First Edition. During the system phase, you may something, again, we don't know, but I'm guessing it's going to be expensive and powerful. We also have here Special Forces Gunner, and this is very interesting. This seems to be replacing the effect of the Special Forces title for the TIE SF in First Edition, except it's now a gunner card. Something you perform a primary forward arc attack and your turret indicator is in your forward firing arc, you may roll one additional dice. After you perform a primary forward arc attack and your turret indicator is in your rear arc, you may perform a bonus primary rear arc attack. Okay, interesting. Now, in First Edition, we only had a forward and rear arc. In fact, it was just printed on the template itself and on the card. We didn't have the mobile arc, but it looks like depending on which way you point it, that's the bonus you get. You don't get to adapt to every situation, which I guess is fair. Turrets from First Edition have changed. They have to try and point in the direction they think they have to shoot. I guess it makes sense that some of these forward and rear arc effects get that same kind of nerf to adapt to that situation. What's interesting though is the TIE SF never was able to shoot sideways, and we don't know if it will based on what we see here. There possibly will be a clause on the TIE SF saying you must only point it forwards or backwards. So don't get too carried away, guys. There's no guarantee it can fire sideways. In my personal opinion, a TIE fighter firing sideways makes absolutely no sense because there's massive solar panels next to the gun. So I think it's just going to be a case of you can only point it forward or backwards, but there are bonuses depending on which way you face it. You have to try and anticipate as best you can what your opponent's doing. And that makes a whole lot of sense. Apart from that, we got no information on the TIE SF. There's a picture here of Quick Draw or whatever they're going to name it in Second Edition. We don't have any more information on that, so let's just move on. We got a couple of shots of the TIE Silencer pilots, Blackout and Kylo Ren, and now they're both Initiative 5. Kylo Ren going from PS9 to Initiative 5, and FFG, what's going on? The pedigree of this pilot, he's a Solo and a Skywalker. What are you doing? Initiative 5, are you insane? No, I think this is fine. I think this is just an adjustment in terms of power level. Remember that the TIE Silencer no longer has to compete with all the other Imperial Aces alongside the same faction. It's now isolated on this faction, and that gives the design a bit more room to breathe. It's no longer just a jacked up intercenter. Indeed, if we have a look at the dial, we can see here on the front spread, it's had a slight nerf. At least those three ranks are no longer blue, so it just seems like they've dialed this ship back a little bit, but it's still going to be very powerful. Kylo Ren's going to play around with Force tokens. It looks as if his ability says after you defend, you may spend one Force to assign I'll show you the dark side to the defender. And that means, if I'm correct, he doesn't need to get hit, which is really, really cool. We don't know what the baked-in ability of the TIE Silencer is. If it has, for example, auto thrusters like the TIE Interceptor, it's going to be insane because it'll have Force and Talon upgrades on top of the relative push the limits of the TIE Interceptor. So I wouldn't stress too much about this ship. We don't really have enough information to comment on it. Plus, we don't know the costing. So just thought I'd quickly mention that. Also, Hyperspace tracking data. Setup. Before placing forces, you may something between 0 and 6. And I think what this is going to say is you may elect an initiative between 0 and 6 and place this ship based on that initiative during setup. Which is cool, kind of like Courier Droid in First Edition, but a bit more powerful. Probably not 0 points like Courier Droid. Makes a lot of sense. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that. We got a few templates and dials here. The silencer is still on a small base, despite the fact it's massive. Yeah, it's still on a small base. And I think this is more to not so much reflect the size of the ship, but the way it flies. It's still very, very agile. It's still got a very nice dial. So I think it makes sense despite the ship's large size. We have Major Strident and Lieutenant Dormant still on the Upsilon class shuttle on those big bases there. And a TIE FO on a small base. Got some dials here. The TIE silencer as previously mentioned. Also the Upsilon class shuttle. Looks very similar to the way it always did. Let's scroll down to the TIE FO and see what's on that spread. And righto, we have a lot of pilots to talk about here. Before we do, let's have a quick look at these two upgrade cards in Advanced Optics and Fanatical. Advanced Optic reads, when you perform an attack, you may spend one focus to change one of your blank results to a hit result. This is just weapon guidance with a different name. Cool, fair enough. Pretty decent card in first edition. We'll see how it's costed and balanced in second edition. Fanatical is the adjective card for the First Order. While you perform a primary attack, if you are not shielded, you may change one eyeball results to a hit result. When I first saw this, I thought, oh wow, lots of unshielded ships on the First Order. Then I realized, no, we don't have TIE fighters and interceptors on the First Order. So yes, in order to use this, you're going to have your ships get hit. I don't think the First Order are going to get any unshielded ships anytime soon, but if they do, they got this to combo with it, which is pretty cool. It's just meant to reflect the fact that these ships get better and better the further into the game you go. In fact, the more you shoot them, the more powerful they are. Reminds me of Wolf Warrior's ability, but I really like this on the First Order. There was a little bit of this kind of tactics in first edition with Kylo Ren. If you shot him, he could punish you with the I'll show you the dark side card, and that still works. If you shoot Kylo Ren, he still does that. And there seems to be more upside for having your ships get shot. Maybe that's going to be more of a theme in the faction. We'll know about that when we get some more revealed. Let's have a look at these pilot cards. And I'll just start with Muse because it also shows us all the stats here. The ship has the same stat line it did in first edition: focus, evade, target lock and barrel roll, and 2 red dice, primary, 3 agility, 3 hull and a shield. Muse is initiative 2. At the start of the engagement phase, you may choose a friendly ship at range 0 to 1. If you do, that ship removes 1 stress token. Cool, a bit of a TIE swarm thing going on here. I guess this is the First Order. They don't have access to TIE fighters, so hopefully a bunch of these FO guys are going to function the same way. Just bear in mind that FO TIE fighters do cost a bit more, so it is a little bit harder to build swarms out of them, but it looks like we're getting a little bit of agency to do that. Back to the spread here, we have Initiative 1 Lieutenant Reavers. After a ship at range 1 to 2 gains a red or orange token, if you do not have that ship locked, you may acquire a lock on that ship and something else happens. Maybe it's going to say they get rid of that token. Either way, it's more swarm support and that's always good to see. Long shot. While you perform a primary attack at range 3, roll 1 additional attack die. Cool, so he attacks with 3 dice at range 1 and 3. That's a lot of flexibility, a lot of good zoning. Seems like a great offensive ability. Doesn't help you with swarms, but whatever, seems alright nonetheless. And last but not least, we have Midnight, which is Omega Leader. Initiative 6, while you defend or perform an attack, if you have a lock on an enemy ship, that ship's defense dice cannot be modified. Same ability as she used to be. Plus, she's gone from PS 8 to Initiative 6, which is a very nice upgrade for this card. Yeah, I'm very curious to see the costings for this because Omega Leader in first edition was a very aggressively costed and a very heavily flown ace. And there's no evidence yet to suggest we're going to get Com Relay in second edition, which is a good thing because that was a really nasty thing. We do still have Duke, so that combo still works. You just have to take your evade actions. If this gets a system slot, which I doubt it will, but if you've got fire control system, that's a great combo there as well. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff with this. Again, doesn't really support the swarm like some of these other pilots do, but yeah, if it's as vicious as it was in first edition, if it has any kind of combo with a particular upgrade card, I think this alone with Duke is still pretty good. It's worth looking out for. Just got to see how aggressively it's costed this time around anyway. And just before we finish up, let's have a quick check of the dial here. It hasn't changed at all. Nope, exactly the same. Cool, no worries, it was a good dial already. They didn't change the TIE Fighter dial either, so it makes sense that they kept this one. That's all the preliminary information we have on the First Order. Not a whole lot to talk about, no new ships unfortunately. But nevertheless looks really cool, and as I said, it already has enough ships to be equal with the Resistance, so trying to get everything balanced before we get Clone Wars stuff in X-Wing is always a good thing. This should be available sometime before Christmas, hopefully. In the meantime, guys, stay tuned. We'll talk about the Mining Guild tie next. Like and subscribe, like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and I'll catch you guys later.